Okay. I'll be here. Yeah. Oh, good. Once we got past the
See you in the morning, Steve.
a little bit. Once we got past the first few minutes, we were okay. Yeah. Good.
Not so bad, Steve. We're on live mic. We're on Facebook now. Let's give it another minute. You'll come in and we'll see. Oh, yeah, down in LA. We just had that. We've been rehearsing all. So. No. Service order outside.
Yeah.
What we decided to do. We decided not to do. Okay. Let's begin. Good Yontif, Shana Tova. Please come find a seat. I want to tell you how long it's been since I've been able to say those words and how sweet they sound. Please come, find a seat. Usually it's good to see you on the screen, somewhere behind that. This afternoon we were interviewed by the reporter Hal Eisner from Channel 11 News. I don't know what made it on the air, but one of the questions he asked me was, in all of your training as a rabbi, did they ever prepare you for something like this? And I said, nope. They taught us to bring people together. They never taught us how to separate them, how to shove them apart. They taught us how to build communities. They never taught us how to broadcast anything. I said, we learned all of this on the fly. So let me just say, if I can say this without offending anybody who's on Facebook and with anyone in the synagogue, it's damn good to see you all. So would all of you stand up and just join me in a big deep breath and a bracha for returning to the shul, for returning to the community, for returning to a little bit of hopefulness and inspiration. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higyanu lazman hazeh. Blessed is God who has given us this beautiful gift of days that we can gather and celebrate a yontif together. Please be seated. Cantor begin.
Ma tovu halecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, ani berov chastecha, amo beitecha. Ma tovu halecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, vani berov chastecha, amo beitecha. Adonai me'on beitecha, u'mekom mishkan kevodecha. V'ani eshtachaveh ve'echra Evrecha lifnei Adonai osi, ma tovu alecha Yaakov. Mishkenotecha Yisrael, vani berov chastecha, vani berov chastecha, amo beitecha. Hai 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 hai.
One of Rabbi Schulweiss's favorite stories, he told it many, many times, was about a philosopher who was an atheist, a militant atheist, and took great pleasure in destroying the faith of believers. And he went from town to town giving his lecture and destroying people's faith, their sense of the world, their meaning, their connection with the divine. But soon he tired of destroying the faith of the simple-minded. He wanted bigger game. So he set his sights on the Rebbe, on the great Hasidic master of the land. He would go to the Rebbe, he would give his talk, he would destroy the faith of the Rebbe, and that would be his prize conquest. The disciples of the Rebbe came to him and said, "Be careful of this man. He's very tricky. He's very sophisticated. His arguments are very slippery, very difficult." The Rebbe says, "Okay, I'll be ready." The atheist philosopher came to the Rebbe's town, came to the Rebbe's Beis Midrash, walked into the Rebbe's study, and the Rebbe sat there reading, studying an ancient book. And just before the philosopher began his spiel, his talk, the Rebbe looked up from the book, caught his eye, and asked him one word, a question in one word. In Hebrew, in Yiddish, it's efsher. In Hebrew, efshar. Is it possible? Is it possible? The atheist stopped immediately, and he repeated the question to himself. Is it possible? Is it possible? Is it possible? Is it possible? And he just repeated it again and again, and it just stopped him in his tracks. And soon he began to weep. Is it possible? Is it possible? And then he shook his head and he fell to his knees and he says, "It's possible. Of course it's possible. Absolutely it's possible. Of course it's possible." He did tshuva. He begged the Rebbe's forgiveness, and according to the story, he became a disciple of the Rebbe and a student of his tradition. It's a big question right now. What's possible? And what's impossible? Rosh Hashanah invites us to imagine a world of possibilities. We have a whole year ahead of us. A whole year of choices, decisions, directions, and values. A whole year of deciding who we want to be and what we want to be and what kind of world we want to live in. And right now, everything is possible. So for a day and a half, 2 days, let's dream of what might be possible. That same Hasidic tradition had a remarkable name for God. One of the names that used for God was Hamichadesh, God who is the power of the new, the power of renewal, the power of invention, the power of originality, the power of novelty, that the world isn't stuck in what it was, that yesterday does not bind tomorrow. There are still possibilities to be realized, possibilities to be imagined, possibilities to be reached for. That is what Rosh Hashanah invites us to do. Who might we be? And what kind of world might we live in? And what kind of connections might we form with each other? And what kind of values might we embrace? And what kind of dreams might we fulfill? Let's begin. with prayer. Please rise together. The Baruch Hu begins on page 18 in the Machzor.
Yai da dai 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 dai, yai da dai 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 dai, yai dai yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai dai, Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Be seated. Baruch atah melech haolam. Asher b'torah mari v'reim b'chachmot
El Chai v'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai
Baruch Hu u'Baruch Shemo.
Amariv Haravim.
Amen. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu B'shocheinu Chumeinu Nasiach B'chukecha V'nismag V'divrei Toratecha U'v'mitzvotecha Le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla ve'avatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim 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 Baruch atah Adonai Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo.
Ohev Amo Yisrael. Amen.
Please join us for Shema on page 22.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha, u'v'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol me'odecha, ve'hayu hadmarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavecha, ayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, uv'lechtecha v'aderech, uv'shochbecha uv'ekumecha, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. ויהי שמות ישמעו על מצוותי אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ויעשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית. וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תתורו אחרי לבבכם, אחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו, ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמן.
We're on page 28.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל, לכנו שירו בשמחה רבה, ואמרו עולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר וקודש, נוערה תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה, זה לי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני. ברוך וברוך שמו גאל ישראל.
Had many wonderful teachers of philosophy, of theology, teachers of faith in my life, but one of the most profound is my daughter Nessa. And those of you who know Nessa know that's very true. Now, when Nessa was 3, she and I had a routine. It was my responsibility to put her to bed, and I would take her to a room. We would lie down in the bed. I would read her a story. We would say a prayer. We would say a little special time. We'd share our thoughts and prayers. And then I would try to sneak out of the room. I would get out of the room. I would get halfway up the hall when there was a shriek from the bedroom. Abba! There's a spider on the ceiling. There's a monster in the closet. There's an alligator under the bed. Come back. Okay. I read Parents Magazine, which is the Shulchan Aruch of parenting. I know what to do. The halacha is you go back into the child's bedroom, you turn on the light, you look on the ceiling, no spider nests. You look in the closet, no monster nests. You look under the bed, no alligators. It's okay, you're safe. Go to sleep. Can I have a glass of water? You can have a glass of water. I'll give you a glass of water. Then you got to go to sleep. And I got her the glass of water, and I tucked her in. I gave her a kiss. It's going to be okay. It's a big day tomorrow. Let's get to bed. And I walked up the hallway. This went on for a year. Until one night, I stopped in the middle of this dance and asked myself a question. Chacham, rabbi, philosopher, who's right? Whose description of the world is empirically accurate? Who's right? The child who says, there's an alligator under my bed, or the father who says, it's okay, you're safe, go to sleep, tomorrow's a big day, I love you, good night. Empirically, factually, the child is right. She doesn't know the names of the alligators who live under their bed. That's part of being a grown-up. That's why you read the New York Times. She doesn't know about global pandemic and international terrorism and refugees and political instability and attacks on political liberalism everywhere. She doesn't know any of that. But she knows there's enough. She knows enough at 3 to know there's something to fear in the world. And yet, even though I know the names of every one of those alligators, and I know how dangerous they are, every one of us says the same thing to the little kid going to bed. It's okay. You're safe. Get to sleep. We have a big day tomorrow. I love you. Everybody says that. Even the most hard-boiled atheist in the world says that. Isn't that interesting? Like, nobody puts a kid to bed by saying, kid, it's a dark, cold, mean, randomly evil, absurd world. Go to sleep. Nobody says that. And if you did, you'd be a sadist to say such a thing to her. You'd have nightmares. But we know the names of all the alligators, and yet we tell every child who goes to bed, it's okay, you're safe. Why do we do that? How do we do that? I submit to you that that's the beginning of faith. That faith isn't a belief in something. Faith is a much deeper thing. It's much more visceral than that. It is our conviction that there's still something to hope for in this world, something to strive for in this world, something to aspire for in this world. And that bringing a child into the world and raising a child in the world, celebrating the life of that child in the world is the greatest act of faith that one could possibly imagine, even if you don't count yourself as a person of faith. That's what faith really is. Because God knows there's enough to be afraid when the lights go out. But every one of us says, go to sleep. Tomorrow's another day. We still have much to do in the world, and let's dream together. So we pray for a night of peace and a morning of awakening. Page 30, please. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom. Let us go to sleep tonight in peace. V'amidenu malkeinu l'chaim, and raise us up in the morning to life. Ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha. Spread above us your sukkah, your shelter of peace. V'takneinu b'yetza tova milfanecha v'oshienu leman shemecha v'yagein b'yadeinu v'yaser mi'aleinu oyev dever v'cherev v'rav v'yagon. Remove from us and protect us from all the things that disturb the peace of the night and bring us fear. V'yaser satan milfaneinu mi'achareinu v'tzel kanafecha tastirenu ki el shomreinu matzilenu ata ki el melech hanun v'rachum ata. Because you, God, have taught us to love and to care for one another and to hold each other and hold each other's hands as we face what darkness fills the world. Guard us as we go out and guard us as we come home. Baruch atah Adonai, hapore sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom
והעמידנו מלכנו, מלכנו לחיים, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ותקננו בעצה טובה מלבנך. השכיבנו, אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו מלכנו, מלכנו לחיים, והושיענו למען שמך, והגן בדינו והסר מעלינו. אויב דבר וחרב ורב ויגון, השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום. שלום.
Tiku b'chodesh shofar. We rise together. Page 33, then page 34.
תיקחו בחודש שופר, בכסר יום חגנו, כי חוק לישראל הוא משפט לאלוהי יעקב, יתגדל ויקדש שמרבה.
Amen.
ועלמוד יברך ירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון וחיי נבול בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמרה ומבורך, ועולם עולם אלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם וינסה, ונדר ויתעלה ויתעלול לשמי קודשו. ריחו לעילה ולעילה, מכל מרחדם שירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן ועולמה ואמרו Amen.
A few moments of quiet personal prayer. The Amidah begins on page 36.
Adonai oz le'amo yiten Adonai yevarech et amo Adonai oz le'amo yiten Adonai yevarech et amo Yitkadav Yikadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma Divrach Yinutei V'yamlich Malchutei V'chayechon V'yomechon V'chayre Kol Beit Yisrael B'agalau V'zman Karim V'himro Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Be'alam V'amaya Yitbarach V'yishtamach V'yitpar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yitador, v'yitalev, v'yitalol, shemei nekudesha. V'yichol leila, uleila, mikol mirchana b'shirata, tushbegada v'nechem ata, damiram yalma v'himro. Tikabal, solon honu, anuhon chol Yisrael, kodam, avon mishmai v'yimaru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba mishmai v'chayim, aleinu v'el kol Yisrael v'himru. Ose shalom imromav. Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'himaru. Amen.
Thank you so much. Tonight, no sermon, just a story. A story to make you feel good. It's rare to have stories that make you feel good. This is a real story. It really happened. It was reported on NPR, so you know it has to be true. When COVID first came to Israel, the government of Israel responded quickly and decisively. There were lockdowns. People weren't allowed to go within 100 meters of their homes. Very strict mask mandates. Very strict rules. And as this infection began to spread through the country, of course, those who were symptomatic were taken to hospital, but those who were infected but not symptomatic at the beginning of the pandemic, was decided they would take them out of their apartments, because everyone in Israel lives in a tiny apartment, and put them in special hotels, quarantine hotels. So the government began requisitioning small boutique hotels in various neighborhoods and gathering the people of that neighborhood who might be infected and putting them in that hotel for a couple of weeks until they could test negative twice and they were no longer contagious. But then COVID began to grow even farther, and they needed bigger hotels. But bigger hotels are not in small neighborhoods, they're in centers. And one of the biggest was the Dan Panorama Hotel in Jerusalem. And if you know where it is, it's right on Keren Kayemet. It's right in the middle of town. So 180 people were put into the Dan Panorama Hotel. But unlike any of the other hotels, they took everybody and put them in the Dan Panorama Hotel. They took Jews, and they took Arabs, and Bedouins, and Druze. They took religious people and non-religious, secular people. They took old people and young people. They took veterans, people who have been in Israel for generations, and they took new Olim, and they put them all in the Dan Panorama Hotel. 180 people, and they called it Hotel Corona. Now, at first, everybody in that hotel sort of found their own people and sort of gravitated, sort of stuck together. And then something very interesting happened at the Dan Panorama Hotel. Here's the story. When Aisha Abu Shahab, a 19-year-old Bedouin, came down to the dining room to get her individually wrapped supper tray, she looked for a place to sit. Growing up, her mother had told her, be curious about people, ask questions, it'll help you. And so now, holding her tray of food, Aisha scanned the room for the friendliest face. And when she made eye contact with an older religious couple, Amram and Gila, she sauntered over and sat next to them. She reflected later, they were so nice, they were laughing all the time, so I chose to sit with them. It was easy to talk to them. How did you get the virus, one would say. How did you? By the end of the meal, they were joking and laughing together. Next morning, Aisha came down for breakfast and realized that something was now different in the dining room. She later reported all the people, Jews and Arabs, religious and not religious, they started to sit together, started to talk together, eat together, sharing stuff together. I asked them about their religion, about Jewish people, like, why do you wear a kippah? And why does a married woman cover her head? And what prayers do you say? People began approaching her. And Jews ended up asking her some of the most sensitive questions that an Arab Israeli citizen can face, questions that just aren't asked in normal, polite conversation. Do you consider yourself Israeli or Palestinian? But this time she reflected that the questions were different. They were friendly. They were genuinely curious. And she concluded, I felt like a new experience. They didn't judge me like I'm an Arab or I'm a Muslim. Yes, I am, but here I am as a human being they could talk to as if there were no difference between us, as though we truly shared something in common. And then springtime came, a year ago, and it was Pesach. And the hotel staff had a dilemma. See, the religious people, and there were some very, very religious people, some Haredim, some ultra-Orthodox people, they wanted a traditional Pesach Seder. But the secular people would never let go of their telephones. And they wanted to take pictures, and they wanted to film it, and they wanted to Instagram it all over the world. And the hotel staff was worried that there would be a war between the very religious people and the secular people. The religious people with their traditional Seder and the secular people with their telephones. So they put up a wall in the middle of the dining room and set the two sides. One side for those who wanted a traditional Seder atmosphere, and one side who wanted just dinner and maybe a piece of matzah on the table. And then when dinner time came, something remarkable happened. People started filing into the dining room, and they stopped at the door, and they saw the wall. And the story is that Gila, the woman in that couple, elderly Orthodox woman, begins to cry. And she says, I can't have a Seder like this. I can't have a Seder that divides us. I can't do it. And Amram, her husband, elderly Orthodox man, says, you're right, we can't do this. So Amram goes up and tries to push the wall. But the wall is a mamish a wall. It's a substantial wall. And he can only push it an inch and another inch. And as he's pushing the wall back, a very, very large, ultra-Orthodox man comes up and asks him what he thinks he's doing. And Amram looks up into the man's face, and he says to him, Ka'am echad yatzanu miMitzrayim. We were one people when we came out of Egypt. Ka'am echad anachnu yoshvim b'seder. We have to sit at the Seder as one people. And this very Orthodox man looks at him, and Amram thinks this is the beginning of a war. And the very Orthodox man says, Atat tzodek, you're right. You're right. As one people we came out of Egypt. As one people we sit to Seder. And the very large Orthodox man begins to help to push the wall open. And then two secular guys come over, and they try to help to push the wall together. And all together, they push the wall back. And all 180 people, Jews and Arabs, religious and non-religious, young and old-timers and newcomers, sat down and made Seder together. And they all agreed, best Pesach they'd ever had. Pesach in Hotel Corona. What's the blessing for this year? The blessing for this year is to learn the lessons that COVID has taught us. Believe it or not, there's a Torah of COVID. The first thing that Torah has taught us is that we need each other. Social distancing is critical for protecting us from the disease, and masks, of course, protect us from the disease, but that doesn't mean we don't need each other. We need each other. We need to face each other, to be together, to share life together, to share our words with each other and our feelings and our hearts. And the next thing that COVID has taught, which is very ironic to me, you see, for 2,000 years, the spiritual traditions of both Western and Eastern faiths have tried to teach one principal truth. And that's the truth. We are all one. That's the great truth of both Western and Eastern mysticisms. Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, all of them. The deep truth of mysticism is that we are one. We all share one reality. We are part of one moral fabric. What happens to one happens to all. All of us are part of this one moral fabric. But you know, we don't learn that lesson. It's too hard to learn, especially in modernity when we emphasize individualism. But here's the irony. COVID has done a fabulous job of teaching that. Because now it's very palpable. Your sneeze is my misfortune. We are not separated. We are not boundaried. We are not isolated. We are not insulated. We share one fate in the world, physically. We are one. As one people, we came out of Egypt, and we are one humanity living on a small, small planet, trying desperately not to kill each other, trying to survive. COVID has taught us the power of that notion, and the palpable, the reality of that feeling. And that's what COVID has come to teach. So push away the wall and sit down together and share this new year. That's the only way that we can do it. The blessing of the year is the opposite of COVID. Let's learn this yontif to take the masks off and become the people we're truly meant to be. Let's learn this year to erase the social distancing and become close to each other again. Let's take this new year and learn to heal each other and to help each other and to bring each other to greater life and greater faith. And let's have a new year of health and strength and happiness. Amen. Everyone, please rise. We'll ask the Kendra to lead us in Kaddish. There's wine. There's wine.
Oh, there is?
There is wine.
Oh, there is.
The crew at Valley Beth Shalom never fails.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch Hu u'Baruch Shemo,
Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol am, v'romemanu mikol lashon, v'kirishanu b'mitzvotav, ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה את יום הזיכרון הזה, יום טרור מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי באנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל עמים, ודברך אמת וקיים לעד. ברוך אתה אדוני
וברוך שמו
מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל ויום הזיכרון.
אמן.
עלינו עלינו עלינו.
We'll get there.
עלינו 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 לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה. Alleinu, and you say Alleinu, and we say Alleinu, Alleinu. שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם. שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם. הקדוש ברוך הוא, עלינו, 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 ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. עלינו, it's up to us.
Missed you for a year, you know that?
I miss it.
I missed you a lot for a year. Woo! Oh, woo! Even in moments of joy, we take a moment to remember those who have gone before us. The words of the mourner's Kaddish found on page 64 will invite anyone who recites Kaddish in memory of a loved one, observance of yahrzeit, to remain standing. Everyone else may please be seated. Unless you see someone standing by themselves, then move over and stand next to them so that no one needs to say Kaddish, no one mourns or grieves alone in this community. Words of Kaddish, Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shmei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'almad divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chaye echon uv'yom echon. Uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael. V'agalau v'zman kariv yimru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal Shmei dekud shabrich. Le'ela u'le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tu'ishbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei Shlom Rabba min Shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh Shalom b'mromav hu yaseh Shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Please be seated. Welcome to the synagogue, and I do hope you find comfort and strength in the words of these prayers. Let me get... Sun's setting outside, so it's actually here. Rosh Hashanah is actually here. Shana Tova. First of all, thank you to Chris Harden, Cantor Barron, Asher Levy for beautiful music tonight. Thank you to everyone who's come to celebrate Yontif with us. It's really a joy. Thank you to the tech crew, the guys in the back, who have not only made this possible, but have broadcast this all over the world. According to the astronomers, you send it out into the stratosphere, and far away from here, hundreds of light years from here, there are alien species that are going to be davening with us. So we're now immortal. Welcome. It's really good to have everybody here. Here's a couple of quick announcements to help you get through the day. Go home tonight, have a quiet meal, have a quiet Yontif, and think about all the possibilities for the new year. Tomorrow morning, here are the options. The traditional service begins at 8:30 a.m. in the tent outside. The Sephardic service begins at 8:30 a.m. here in this room. The main service in the sanctuary begins at 9:30 a.m. and the online virtual service begins at 10 o'clock in the morning. If you'd like to watch the online service, any of you, and you have not yet signed in to VBS TV, find the email that we sent you about 4 times and sign in to VBS TV. There's a little video that tells you how to do it. There's a list of instructions. But if all else fails, Matthew, what can we do? Call the tech line. If we just call the synagogue, call the synagogue, 818-788-6000, and say, sign me up, hook me up, and one of our brilliant tech people, including my son, will get on the phone with you and walk you through it. I did it twice today, once from my dad and once from my wife, and it worked fine. It's really not all that complicated. If I can do it, you can probably do it too. So please, we want everyone to be on it. So 8:30 a.m. for the traditional service and Sephardic service, 9:30 for the main service, 10 o'clock online. Everybody got that? In the afternoon, tomorrow's service is at 2 o'clock. The services in the main sanctuary will be shorter than you're used to. You're welcome. The services in the traditional tent and in here will be traditional services, rather longer than that. The kids program begins at 1 o'clock. Time slots have already been handed out for them. There's going to be a virtual version of it, I think, at 5, because some kids weren't able to come at the last minute. We're going to walk you through. It's a wonderful Disneyland ride, all about the high holidays. There's tickets available. If you didn't get it, you just contact the synagogue and we'll find a way to get you here. So please enjoy this wonderful holiday. Here's a few other things. You got to get in with a ticket, a valid ID, and vaccination verification. That plus a good heart, that'll get you in, right? There's increased security, so please take that in consideration because the service is shorter. And the service is shorter because we're trying to maintain everyone's safety and health. We're going to start at 9:30. So it's a good idea to get here a little bit early. I know that's counterintuitive for Jews. It's the reason the Messiah hasn't yet come. But try and get here so we can start the davening right at 9:30. In terms of transportation, we saw the parking lots are open, and there's parking in the neighborhood, but please don't park in front of driveways or trash cans. But we do recommend that if it's at all possible, there's Lyft, there's Uber, there's GoGo Grandparent to get to the synagogue, especially for Yom Kippur. And there's special help for those who need special help with valid disabled placards. Anything else, Matthew? Good. Let me wish everyone a happy and a healthy and a sweet new year. Ash, you doing Yigdal? Yep.
And then we'll finish with a nigun.
Page
Page 1668.
68.
יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא בנט אל מציאותו, אחד בן יחיד כייחודו, נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו. אין לו דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו. אינו אדון עולם בכל נוצר, יורה גדולתו ומלכותו, מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך עד שם תהילתו, ברוך עד שם תהילתו.
Everybody please stand.
Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai.
Yai lai 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 lai. Ay 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 For a happy, healthy, sweet New Year, Shana Tova.
Celebrate the holidays. Tova, Doctor. The right way. Boy, what a long day.